33, Bill. I stared at the black stain on my floor the next morning. In the light of day, I held forth for some logical explanation, like how the shadowy figure in the night turns out to be a Colac by day. But no, my floor was stained by the black ink. It had drained, but before it happened, it had wandered. I could see the jagged region stained, those fingers of ink, just like salvation. Factory, just like over Brand's body, the ink had crawled itself forward, searching for something. It had not found it. There had been a monster in my room last night. Was it the same one that had crawled on my ankle in the dark? I assumed so. How could that be? The thought of being there was more than one was too much for me to handle. I quickly dragged my armchair into the corner, hiding the ink beneath it. Meet any of the servants trying to clean it up, getting in trouble. I dressed quickly, with a great purpose, and left my house only to stop a few blocks away and realize I had no idea where I was going. How was I to find Constance? Finding me was much easier. Our house was well known, the largest in the neighborhood. But to find someone who dressed coarse girls and lived with her sisters and parents in the city like this, there was a much harder task. The coarse girls, that's it. I could meet her at the theater tonight. That could do the trick. I will apologize and tell her what happened last night, all of it, the ink, meeting with the Joey Drew fellow. Of course, there was now an afternoon to fill. Until then, I had the other idea. I brought the coffee and sat on the plush green shetty in the foyer. Thank you, Johnson, I said. The old man with the plaza uniform nodded. In turn, I had the memory of then, of playing hide-and-seek with him when I was young. The hotel had been my playground, and I loved it even more than the beach just outside. Now the hotel just felt like a weight pressing down on me, a reminder of things to come. There were days I wanted to run away from it all, start a new life, maybe on the West Coast, things that were seemed bright and fresh. Everyone has something behind. When I turned 18, maybe I would. Maybe. The problem with fear is that while running can feel just, in fact, it was also fear of actually running away, of what that could mean, of where to go, and who to be, of being without the safety net of my father's conditions and wealth. What was I so afraid? It was exhausting, but the feeling just persisted on and on, lingering like a toothache. He entered the lobby like he was walking onto the stage, and there he was, in his finely tailored pine-striped suit, the Mr. Drew from the last night. The sank deep into the settee and pulled my hat low. I could see his feet now as he almost danced his way across the floor. His shoes were freshly polished and made of the fine leather. I had not seen shoes that well made in a long time. I wondered at the man's wealth. He was too showy for it to be old money, that's for certain. He joined them then, the other pair of shoes, or should I say boots. Those I recognized, though I find it interesting I noticed them at all in the first place. They were brown and well worn and huge. I was surprised to see them. My plan was to keep an eye on these Joey person. But there he was. This made things a little more difficult. I sank lower. Tom, my good man, it's wonderful to see you again, said the shining shoes. Let's go, replied the boots. Always in a hurry, replied the shining shoes. Just like getting the job done. The boots turned and made their way toward the exit. The shining shoes stayed still for a moment, then followed. I raised my head and watched the retreating backs of Mr. Connor and Joey. I had to follow them. I had to do it quickly, even as the nerves kept me rooted to the spot. I managed to jump to my feet, spilling some coffee on the great settee. I looked down. The dark liquid swept into the fabric and disappeared. I clenched my fists. I was still wearing gloves. The ink was on my hands. That was almost gone, but not quite. Not quite. I had to follow them. I chased after him out of the hotel and ran into Mr. Connor. I fell backward onto the sidewalk, right into my backside. It feels like running face first into the wall. Will you following us, Bill? Asked Mr. Connor, looking down at me. Joey joined him, and together they loomed over me like discarded cartoon characters, which was fitting, I suppose. No, Mr. Connor, I replied. Come on, we could use your help. Mr. Connor extended the meaty hand and took it. He held me up to standing. Are you sure this is a good idea? Asked Joey, who seemed quite sure of the answer. Could use the help. He helped before. Mr. Connor turned and started walking again as Joey and I stared at each other. If you knew about the machine, why didn't you say so? Asked Joey. I wasn't sure he was trying to trick me, but at this point, I honestly felt like the best policy. I was keeping the secret from Mr. Connor. Joey thought about that. Then suddenly this potion brightly. Well, that is something, isn't it? He smiled and gave me a hearty pat on the back. Don't want to get on Tom's bad side, he said with a grin. I smiled back, not sure if I considered a friend yet, but I was happy to win him over for a moment. We walked speedily to catch on with Mr. Connor, who was waiting for us by his truck. As I climbed in and got squashed in the middle of the bench, I asked it, "What about Scott?" Mr. Connor didn't say anything. He just stared at the truck and we were on our way. Considering the company and the direction we were heading, I'm soon our end will be a probation factory. Was not happy about this, but what had expected to find if I followed them. Of course, that was where they were going. I simply had to deal with the very real fact that I was about to enter a place where I had seen the man explode and where the monsters had chased me in the dark. Left to myself at the very thought of simply having to deal with it. It was not really something one simply did. What amused you, friend? Asked Joey. Oh, it was nothing, I replied mindly, my hands together. He didn't press, which is good because for the life of me, I couldn't think of a single joke that could use as an excuse. Knock, knock. Who's there? Brant. Brant who? That was all my mind could tell me, repeating the same phrase over and over. Brant who, indeed? Did he have a family? Were they missing him? Would the police start searching for him? Brant who? We pulled to the stop, as usual with no ceremony. Mr. Connor opened his door and jumped out of the truck. I was shocked. We weren't at the factory. We were at the grimy little part of the town at the dirty little corner bar eventually called the Way Out. Joey opened his door casually, slipped out of the truck, even as Mr. Connor walked in the purpose and opened the door to the bar. He had disappeared inside before Joey could accidentally close the truck door in my face. Sorry about that, kid, he said with a grin and opened it again. I smiled and stepped onto the sidewalk, staring at the bar. I didn't understand anything right now, but I wished Constance was with me. We stepped into the dark, dingy bar, both of us removing our hats as we did, so we could look around. It was the early afternoon, so there weren't any people there, and those who were seemed like they always happened. Were part of the furniture, dust particles floating in the sunbeams, landing on rings of the tables that seemed to illuminate nothing else. Come on, said Mr. Connor from across the room. He was at the door by the sticky bar. We followed him into the back room of the black paddle wood. There was a table and chairs piled up on the top of it. There was a stale smell in the air. When I would walk over to join Mr. Connor by one of the wood panels, my shoes stuck to the floor slightly with each step. This is not exactly what I have in mind, Tom, said Joey, stepping his way to us. I told you the other entrance is out of order, replied Mr. Connor. Other entrance? You fix things for a living, Tom, replied Joey. Mr. Connor shook his head and pressed on the wood panel. It slipped back an inch from the wall and he dragged it down to the side. Some things are just broken for good. He stepped through the wall. I didn't think it was good form to follow, so I extended my hand to allow Joey the right of way. He took it without even acknowledging me. I followed behind him into the dark. We found ourselves in the tunnel, sloping downward on the steady decline. It flattened out soon enough, and Mr. Connor turned the flashlight ahead of us. Stay to the right, he ordered it. Just as he did, my leg caught the edge of the something and I stumbled forward. Ow! Mr. Connor turned the flashlight on me, and to the left of the tunnel is pointing at it. There was a metal table next to us. Or no, not the table. As Mr. Connor drank the light along the wall, it revealed the long lawyer belt. For crates, kid, said Joey beside me. Crates of liquid. I nodded. Okay, enough sightseeing, said Mr. Connor. He named the flashlight in front of him, lighting the large tunnel and casing the black void in the distance. His hulking saluted, leaned the way. We followed him, and the pointed light with the darkness behind us and darkness before us. I understood what was happening, and dread filled me. With every step we took. Obviously, there would be more than one entrance into the whiskey factory. That there was another way out in the entire time. That we would have gone out a different way. That Brent who? Something directly across the light in front of us. Did you see that? I asked it, stopping short. But no one else stopped. They just kept walking, the light getting farther away from me, the darkness surrounding me, like shadows climbing up the wall. I ran to catch up and held my breath as we approached the spot where I seen something. Nothing happened. So I let out my breath in a long "Bill!" I cried out as I felt out in my face. On the raw floor, something heavy on my back, something that knew my name. I tried to push it up, trying to turn over, but it's screaming and fighting back, leaning hard on me, and my fist was rubbing against the gravel on the ground. I couldn't even cry for help. The wind was being crushed out of me. I heard the sounds of gravel above me then. I heard sounds of fight, yells, and a mighty groan as something was pulled off me when one scooped. I scrambled onto my back, sitting there with the cold cement floor, padding hard, trying desperately to fill up my lungs as fast as I could. The flashlight had fallen and was shining directly at Joey's gleaming shoes. In the distance, I could see the faint shadow of Mr. Connor in the struggle. I quickly reached over to grab the flashlight, and I took to my head, put Mr. Connor over Joey's shoulder. Mr. Connor was holding the figure upright, a hand at each side of his upper torso. He wasn't just holding him upright. He was holding him dangling in the air. His toes were grazing at the ground. The figure's clothes and hair were dressed in black ink. But he was not covered completely, not like Brand had been. This figure could see his face, his wild eyes. It was Scott. "What's going on?" I demanded. "Cool down," said Mr. Connor to Scott as he trudged about in the air. He's coming for you all," he screamed. He suddenly looked directly at me, at the dim light, his eyes glowed in the light, and his face cornered into the grimace. "Be quiet," said Joey, coming up beside me in an angry hiss. "How do you think I should do that?" asked Mr. Connor, gazing at us. His arms were straight forward, holding the twisting Scott. "Just do it," ordered Joey. "This is all your fault," Scott spat at Joey. "You're the real monster. Tom!" "How are you going to silence me, Drew? How do you want him to do to me?" Scott started laughing. It was high-pitched and pierced in my ears. The sound echoed in the tunnel. "Do it! Do it!" ordered Joey. Scott danced around again, and Mr. Connor struggled to keep hold of him. He twisted and turned and leaned down and bit Mr. Connor's hand. Instantly, Mr. Connor let go, and Scott stretched himself out of his grip, immediately ran off into the dark. There was a hollow ton in the blackness as Mr. Connor and I raced to follow him. Scott was lying on the ground unconscious. The tunnel had turned at the 90-degree angle. He had charged right into it. I reached up and touched the wound on my forehead. I thought about how I got it. I backed away slowly from Scott. "Good," said Joey, joining us. "Leave him here to sleep it. Come on." He grabbed the flashlight in my hand and continued down the tunnel. Mr. Connor carefully adjusted Scott to make him more comfortable, and then stared at his body for a quiet moment. The light got dimmer and dimmer. As I stared at Scott and Mr. Connor, I felt the need to say something. "What do you mean by monster?" I asked quietly. "I already told you about that," he replied. "What's going on? Please tell me." I sounded pathetic. I sounded too desperate, like a small child. My father will not approve. I was not coming at this conversation from the place of authority. "I can't," said Mr. Connor quietly. He stood up and looked at the light disappearing down the tunnel in the distance. We need to fix the machine and take it back to New York ASAP. Okay, I said, but inside I was a mess of anxiety and fear. How could they possibly do that? How could they move the machine at all, knowing there was some creature on loose? Why would they just leave it here to haunt Atlantic City for all the time? Or will they take it to one of the biggest cities in America, eventually unleash all the horrors there? Let's go, said Mr. Connor. I can't. I couldn't go back there. I couldn't be part of this, not after everything I've seen. Don't be a fool. Come on. I could barely see Mr. Connor anymore. Joey had left us literally in the dark. No! Who do you think he was, ordering me around? I was William Chambers, the heir to all Atlantic City. Heck, I probably own these tunnels as well. I turned my heel and tracing my steps in the dark. Bill! Called out Mr. Connor, but I was stunned. I was not going to end up like Brandon or Scott. I knew deep down how close I was. I felt madness inside me, that I assumed that was a human reaction to a horrific situation. But now I wasn't sure. Now I didn't know what was happening to me. I turned to the corner, picked up speed. It was straight shoot to the bar now. When the ground started to rise, I felt a wave of relief, and I burst into the back room from behind the panel like water breaking through the damp. I stood in the room for a moment and collected myself as best I could, though the fear could not go away. I thought long and hard. I need to find Constance.